Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to another episode of Women of the West Indies. I hope that you're all having a fantastic Sunday so far. If you're new here, I'm your host, Vinaya Bass, and on this show, we celebrate the strength, resilience, and achievements of women throughout the West Indies. Happy belated Emancipation Day to everyone who was celebrating their freedom from slavery this week. Sunday, I sat down with Mrs. Angeli Spencer, Miss Jamaica Universe 1994, and today we are heading to Guyana via New York to catch up with the social media manager of VH1, producer, and beauty influencer, Miss Sarita Nauth. How are you this afternoon, Sarita?
I'm doing well. How are you, Vernier?
I'm fantastic. How are things in New York?
They're pretty gloomy today. It's really, really hot, but I definitely feel the ripple waves of the Caribbean effects after having Caravana in Toronto. So New York is definitely feeling the summer heat and excitement.
Absolutely. And I know that you were in the Caribbean recently as well, was it St. Thomas? So how was that?
Yes. It was amazing. Honestly, I haven't been back to the Caribbean in such a long time, and it just felt like coming home. The Guyanese accent came out in full effect. I think by the end of the trip, I'm like negotiating with street vendors on Guinness star fruit. I'm about to climb somebody's tree just so that way I can get some fruit. It felt like being back home. It wasn't like a vacation in Hawaii or LA for work. It definitely felt like somewhere that I can truly just be myself. So always happy to go to the Caribbean.
That's fantastic. So, guys, you know how it goes already. Get a nice drink, sit in a fantastic seat, and get ready for a fantastic conversation with phenomenal women of the West Indies. So, guys, welcome back to the Wow Show. This afternoon, I am sat down with the beautiful Sarita Nauth. She is the social media manager of VH1, a producer, and also a beauty influencer. So, Sarita, we're going to jump straight into the conversation, taking you back to Guyana for a bit. So, I know that you were born in Guyana and then you moved to Belize at a young age before relocating to New York. How did those early moves shape you and your cultural identity?
Wow. So definitely moved around at a young age. Definitely shaped me in a very interesting way because I didn't really know myself at a young age. I went from a country where everyone looked like me and then went somewhere where everyone was predominantly Spanish in Corozal town. It only took me years later in my life that I found out that Belize is rich in Caribbean history and there were people who were a lot more melanated on the other side of the island and spoke French Creole, and there were a lot more Haitian descendants, and just so diverse more than ever. But where I grew up in Corozal Town definitely was a culture shock for me. So I didn't get to really embrace my Guyanese culture until I moved to New York about 25 years ago. And then from there, living in Queens and moving around a lot there, I was still, on the brink of trying to figure out my own identity. And then, I would say in the past few years, I really focused on learning about myself, my culture, where I'm from, actually listening to the stories of my family and really getting closer to my other families, both in Guyana and here, and learning more about myself and my people historically. And so that definitely, it took me a long time to get to where I'm at right now, but I'm really proud of like my own personal journey.
That's fantastic. So, can you speak Spanish?
Un poquito más. No, that's not. I I will say that it's very much not great. I definitely always, because Belize is so similar to like the Caribbean or schools across the street. So like every time like I just didn't know how to say a Spanish word or like failed class. Like my mom was at the balcony across the street. So you always hear like Sarita like really loud because Sarita is like a very Spanish name. So it wasn't until like when I was in Belize that people actually I knew more about my name and how it actually translates to different cultures. So they didn't have no problem with my name, but I definitely had issue with myself in general.
That's interesting. And I know that your grandmother in Guyana, she was a seamstress and she inspired your initial interest in fashion and design. So can you tell us a little bit more about how she influenced you and your passion for fashion, especially since you left Guyana at such a young age as well?
Yes. So my grandmother passed away in the height of the pandemic in Guyana. And something that I always kind of kept with me ever since I was young is that all I knew is that she loved to sew, and through being a seamstress, Auntie Gally was very well known in Georgetown, and it was always fascinating to hear about these stories. And my mom would always like help me sew little clothes for my dolly, or like me and my sister would do that. And I eventually pursued a larger career from it at an early age. I went to the High School of Fashion Industries in New York, got a 4-year degree in fashion design, then transitioned to FIT studying fashion merchandise management, and then eventually advertising, marketing, communication. So about 6 years, my entire life was embroiled in fashion design, but it was also really rewarding that I kind of got to connect with my grandmother at certain points in times and to say, I made this, this is me following along in your footsteps, and really being able to seek out like my passions and kind of like make her proud, from where I'm at, because, it wasn't just a choice of survival learning these skills. It was something of passion and sort of making, my, grandmother proud. So I'm really glad that I pursued that part of my career. It definitely taught me a lot about being good with my hands and being very well disciplined and creating art and through fashion. And it's definitely something that's bled into like my work over the years that I think has helped my creative eye. So I think that it was all worth it in the end.
So you went on from doing fashion to then getting more into beauty. Can you tell me a little bit about that transition as well?
So my start in media was always like in between the fashion design of it all. I went to school in New York City. So if you're in New York City, you are always inundated with filmings and celebrities and media. There's always something happening. And because there was always like, this is the hype before like social media really started picking up. I loved, following around my favorite celebrities, in New York City. I loved, I'll never hide that part of my life because it definitely made me who I was. It definitely put me and gave me a lot of visibility in front of like celebrities and their teams because I just loved it. So like I would stand outside of like, different places and, meet celebrities at like meet and greets. And overall, I think it helped craft my confidence when it came to like talking to celebrities. So when the journey in college came to transition from fashion design to advertising, marketing, communications, which focused more primarily on publicity, marketing, the communications and developmental side of a brand and a business through the lens of media. I was able to then use those skills and say, okay, well, I actually have no problem being a very much, you put me in a setting where I could be a publicist. I can have that confidence to work with talent across the board. You put me in, when it comes to pop culture and social media, I can thrive in that way. So I would say that that little sort of side hobby of being fan of different favorite boy bands and girl groups that, growing up actually helped me. And trust and believe, my parents didn't understand what was going on. They were just like, they didn't really know what was going on. But if anything, my mother like understood. She's like, yeah, I heard me and the Jonas Brothers actually like ended up making my career great because I was able to build that confidence to deal with the celebrities on a higher scale than I do now in my day to day. So I would definitely say that it was a very interesting transition, but it's my own journey and I made the best of it.
So explore that point as well about your mother not understanding, because your career choices are very interesting for someone who originates from the Caribbean and someone with, Black parents typically.
Yeah.
So most times they don't understand the creative industry. We're more
Yeah.
conditioned to focus on roles in accounting or becoming a lawyer or those
Medical.
roles
Yeah.
that have more of a sense of financial security. So how did
Yeah.
your parents take it when you said, first of all, that you wanted to pursue fashion? And then you stepped
So
away from to be an influencer, which would have been quite early on in the game as well. So how did they take
yeah.
it?
So my mother actually was a person who has been so inspiring and encouraging when it comes to my career more than everything, because growing up, I would hear the influence that, and every Caribbean mother has this influence and this undying love to Celine Dion and Princess Diana. So with that being said, my mom would always grow up telling me that how she told her mom, oh, she really liked Princess Diana's style today, and she was embroiled with the media and like how we saw the media unfold when it comes to spotlighting different celebrities even in the Caribbean. So with that being said, doing fashion design was a natural thing because they're like, oh, you have entire schools teaching you how to do something that like people really do for survival. Great, that's amazing. You're in high school, as long as you're passing your classes, amazing. But when it came to the celebrity part of it, I mean, I was never cut out to be an engineer, a doctor, an accountant. Like, that's just not me, and I have different mentees now that, have told me that they have their own, families pressuring to do things when they also want to be in media. And I think for like my mom, for example, she's always supported me, but my dad has said, I don't get or understand why she's leaving so early to go to the CBS morning show or this and that, or go into LA. Well, this is before I started going to LA, but it's like going to random places to meet celebrities. He didn't understand that. My mom understood it. So because she gave me a little bit more leniency, and she's like, well, she's not doing anything bad. And luckily I didn't do anything bad and I didn't get in trouble. I think that after a while, when I've actually secured my job, all of that hard work, and when the money started coming in, they're like, oh, like you can actually make a career out of this. So they're actually really, really proud that I've been able to chase my dreams and also be able to make like a fruitful career from it. And there's actually money in it. Whereas social media in this day and shape is this day and age, sometimes isn't the most like paying, well-paying job unless you have really higher end clients. So I will say that how it took them a while to understand. My dad still doesn't describe my job properly. He's like, yeah, she does red carpets, events, Beyonce, something. Like he'll say random celebrities' names. But at the end of the day, at least that I know that my parents like are still proud of me.
That's amazing. And you mentioned at the beginning as well that you were chasing celebrities around New York City, like the Jonas Brothers at 1515 Broadway. But what was it like securing your first internship at VH1 on the social media team after chasing around celebrities for so long? And then how did that actually shape your experience in your early career in the media industry?
You know what? It's actually really funny. And some of my friends and my mentees know this story, but I feel like I've never really said it on a public platform enough that my joy and like my desire in high school to work with celebrities, I will remember it like it was yesterday. I would get bullied about it. I would get bullied, by people, some of which have asked me for jobs in this day and age, over a decade later. They would bully me about meeting celebrities or having a desire to meet celebrities. And I said, well, I'm not doing it because I'm a weird fangirl. I'm doing it because I have a genuine interest in their career and what it takes, the team and the machine that it takes to fuel this sort of, this public figure. And it's really less about sort of the person and the individual. It's more about the artistry that it takes to run such a prolific, sort of in public image. And while I guess I was ahead of my time, I remember getting bullied about saying that I was never going to meet them. And I'm like, okay, it's not going to be worried about meeting them. It's about where I go from here. I knew that I always was going to end up here. I knew that this is my dream job. So when I would see celebrities leaving TRL at 1515 Broadway, which is now like my home of 10 years, please don't stalk me. But, but it's, it's one of those things. It's one of those things that like, it is something that I always walk into work knowing that this is my greatest manifestation come true. And when I get to do what I do every day at work, it lets me know that that was a 18-year-old girl who had a dream of really making it, and she did it. And mind you, what can't be documented in an hour-long program, or even an article, or even just me talking to friends, like there were many people along the way that saw me work 4 jobs to stay in college. They saw me struggle, just trying to figure out my own identity. I didn't, I sacrificed a lot in my personal life, and I went to every single conference that had VH1 or MTV's name. I tried to meet and connect with so many individuals and so many people, and I worked really, really hard for years. So I will say that how there's that glitz and glamour that's shown, but there's a lot of years at work that goes into the overnight success that's being shown is sometimes a 10-year plus long journey.
And that's the thing, and that's why I chose to focus more on the journey during these conversations rather than, oh, yes, you work for VH1, because people sometimes think that you literally will go from zero to hero, and it's never that easy. Because obviously, when you look on social media and things like that, we're only showing the highlight reel of our life, right? Almost a summary, like this 1 hour conversation, but there's so much more that goes into it. So kudos to you for, maintaining that enthusiasm and that drive in such an unconventional career as well. But guys, I'm going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. So, guys, if you're just tuning in now, you are tuned in to Women of the West Indies. And this afternoon, I am sat down with the fantastic Sarita Nauth. And so far, we've been talking about, her upbringing in Guyana and Belize and eventually New York City, and how she entered the world of media. So, as well as your internship at VH1, you also did internships in photography, arts, and media. Which experience would you say had the most significant impact on your career trajectory, apart from VH1?
Wow. It's really hard to say a particular one because most of my internships help define and help get me to where I'm at in such a very interesting path, I guess. Photography taught me so much about being able to train my eye creatively in a way that brings me peace through, appreciation. And I will say that I did that through beauty. I did that through art. I did that through, capturing the city. There's a lot of things. And I think that so often in our culture, we're not really encouraged to really be at peace with things that don't necessarily aren't going to bring us money right then and there, like, being able to sit in the stillness and the beauty of the things around us and capturing that and translate it into art is always something that's not really seen as a biggest motivator, because you always should be hustling, you should always do certain, especially when you're a girl. And so at a very young age, I started my first internship in photography when I was in 8th grade, so I was roughly about
Oh,
15 or
wow.
16 years old. And then I transitioned to another internship before I even started my official college internships with Scenarios USA, which was a nonprofit organization focused on young professionals learning how to be filmmakers and work in the film industry. And from there, I started working more in beauty. I transitioned into working as a assistant and social media, publicist manager for my mentor, Andrew Sotomayor, who I'm forever grateful to for teaching me everything I know about this world that I'm in now, from beauty to, film to TV to everything, live, recorded, scripted, reality, everything. So, I'm really grateful that I've had amazing sort of opportunities along the way that has helped shape me where I'm at. So, like, where I'm at now, I'm able to help other people.
So you also have an interest. You're also a producer, and you've worked on programs like America's Next Top Model, Love and Hip Hop, and also Black Ink Crew. How did those experiences also contribute to your development and your interest in production?
So being a producer, I started off as more so with the social media team. We really honestly produced a lot of content on our phones, like, after our digital team, who we work in conjunction with, to create content, the social team would always come in to the fold. So I learned from a lot of great digital producers in the media space over the past decade. So a lot of times, working on these shows, I was able to then transition into a social media producer where I was able to take what the fans are talking about the show and ask the talent particular questions that help develop the social strategy of a show better, and helps supplement what people see on TV as well as on their phones, because a lot of people watch TV or they're streaming or watching shows on their phones, or they're on their phones at the same time. So how can we make sure that we are listening to them and what they're saying personally about a show? It's people like myself, our job to help ensure that we are listening to them and we are taking all of that to our own feeds and to our talent and the actual programming. So transitioning to being a social producer and eventually an actual producer for digital series has been something that has been very rewarding. And I even went back to school last year for digital cinematography at Berkeley Online, so that way I could learn a little bit more about training my creative eye to have a more storytelling, more authentic storytelling in my work, which now does translate into the work that I do in the Caribbean space. So it's been a journey, and I will say that I'm glad that I have that skill now.
So fantastic. And also, starting off as a young female intern to becoming the senior social media manager you are today and producer for organizations like VH1 and BET, how have you been able to establish your authority and to be taken seriously when managing and instructing male colleagues, for example, like videographers and producers?
I will say that in my career, I will say that I will say as a person, I've never been shy to say what I needed to say. I've never been shy to um, really use my voice where I can. And I will say that my boldness has allowed and enabled me to be a little bit more structured when it comes to presenting myself. You know, I've never been shy about that. So when it comes to working with the people who I didn't really see in my day to day, I did have to assert a little bit more of my authority, especially when you're a producer, especially when you're working on red carpet events. Our bosses are expecting us to throw us into the fire and, you know, power through it. And it's a quality that I will say that it took many, many years of confidence and many years of security within myself as an individual to say, this is the bigger picture. This is the goal at hand. I need to use my voice to say that how this is how it needs to be, and I don't really care what you say. And I will say that it comes with sitting in your power. It comes with knowing exactly who you are, and even if like you don't really feel totally confident, you've got to fake it until you make it. So I will say being thrown into high pressure situations has allowed for me to use my voice and empower other people to say, this is what we need to do. Let's just get this job done. So it's very funny that there's this this is very funny video that one of my coworkers took me at the BET Awards recently, where I'm like very like 5 feet tall, standing in front of all these like 6 foot tall plus security guards, and I'm just like, hey, like I'm gonna be running from here to here. We're in the heat. My phone, I have 2 phones, they're about to overheat. Like I've got to get these people, because it was a new position that I had worked on a carpet. It was something new to me. It was obviously trying to make sure that I did a great job, and I really wanted to make sure that like I had to assert my authority, because what will happen is a lot of people, when you don't use your voice, they will step all over you. So I will say that using your voice and being bold with your boundaries has been very helpful in my career.
So where do you think you get that from though? Because it's one thing to say it, but it's a completely different thing to do it. So where do you get that confidence from? Is it from your experience?
That was
From
being
what
Caribbean. Being Caribbean and being a Caribbean woman has definitely, and embracing that. I'm talking about that fieriness that we have, that we possess, and being bold and brazen. And I will also say that growing up being told that being loud was not welcomed, and being so strong in that way was not welcomed. I will definitely say that that's where it comes from, that I realized that I wasn't going to get anything in my life if I just stayed quiet. So I will say that that brazenness and that sort of understanding of like, I'm not going to take any ish from anyone, that is something that I will say bleeds into my personal and professional career, because it's something in there. Like my mom has always been someone who's very brazen. So I will say that that fiery spirit that I have, and that passion, you know, that I have for where I work definitely comes into play. Because if anybody knows me, knows that how VH1 has and all will always have a special place in my heart, because it's some place that I've always wanted to work. So every project that I have, may be very little to huge, there's always that same passion and love that I have for the brand. So being protective about my brand, but also being protective over my own identity, has definitely helped give me the confidence I need to speak up.
Because that's one of the things though. Sometimes when you're a female and you're outspoken, it can be deemed bitchy. So how do you find that balance without coming across, as being so aggressive, and you can't mingle and work effectively with people because you're trying to be domineering?
Uh, well, listen, there's other people that we see do it, right? And again, it's one of those things where at the end of the day, especially when I had a recent experience on a red carpet where I had no choice but to be just that, and I had a very particular goal in mind, and there were a lot of people coming through the carpet to interview with a particular talent of ours, and it was just so many people all at once. And I remember, probably there's a lot of people who do not like me, and there's a lot of people that I earned their respect within the matter of 2 hours, where I basically said, this is not what we're going to do. We're not going to cross this boundary. This is how we're going to do it. And it's like something clicks in my brain. Something just kind of like shifts, and I just see tunnel vision, like the goal at hand, and making sure that I get, the right celebrities, like making sure Idris Elba gets his interview, and, Cheryl Lee Ralph is, being able to be, celebrated while she's in the wings waiting for this interview to wrap up and bring her in. Like these are things that I feel like not a lot of people see in my day to day, that I embody and possess. And when I have opportunities like I do right now to speak about my career and speak about these moments, I'm grateful for them, because then I'm able to share with the world, and also remind myself that like truly I am that girl, like truly I am that person, I am who I think I am, because it is something I've worked incredibly hard to embody and to, grow. And so I have to sit in that power. I can't let anything get to me in that way. So it is really truly like trial through fire and growth, and it really helped build me to be who I am. So I'm unapologetic about it, and I'm grateful that it's part of my identity.
And it's fantastic to be having this conversation with you as well, because I think that's a part of the industry that we don't see. Because as the viewer, all you see is the celebrity coming out on the red carpet, doing interviews, but you don't realize how many moving parts are going on in the background. So thank you so much for sharing, because I literally feel like I just went with you on the red carpet just now. So
Yeah.
one of the things that you've also done is you've created Black Girl Beauty. What inspired you to create that, and what impact do you hope to have with that project on the representation of Black women in beauty and media?
So, Black Girl Beauty was a passion project of mine that I started and conceptualized as early as like 2017, 2018. A lot of times in the digital space, we're asked to create concepts and take that passionate idea that you had and see if we have budget for it eventually. So, I've always wanted to create a series that enlightened Black women based off of my own personal experience of seeing Black women in the beauty space not being treated equally like others have. That's coming from marketing, that's coming from foundation colors, that's coming from my time as being a beauty influencers and being in spaces where I might have been the only person of color. And I'm like, well, what about the Black women who continue to pioneer for women of color overall? What about the Black women who continue to add more money to the beauty industry and contribute to these brands and make them popular? Where are they going to get their flowers? And there aren't that many Indo-Caribbean beauty influencers. There aren't that many Indo-Caribbean women that are, have as much buy-in power and sort of speak-in power as Black women. So Black women have always, advocated for themselves and for women of my complexion and shade too, regardless if I'm Indo-Caribbean or Afro-Caribbean, which I'm Indo-Caribbean. So with that being said, it was more so of a love letter, and also I was speaking to the audience of VH1, speaking to, our primary audience. So that series that I developed was sort of episodic storytelling of different viewpoints of how beauty is being translated in the digital space, the marketing space, and what we can do to move forward with it and get, ahead of the sort of constant trends that we see in the beauty space. So I really absolutely enjoyed it. My good friend Andrea Lewis did the Black Beauty Effect, which had gone more viral as well, because it just goes to show that the story is not done. There's so much more that needs to be said. And I think that it's just beautiful. I think it was able to lean into our other sisters to say, like, how can we continue to come together, and feel accepted and loved? Because I've never, been in a space with a beautiful Black women where I didn't feel empowered, loved, appreciated about anything, so that's the reason why like Black Girl Beauty was something that I will forever love. It's like my first big project where I got big budget and money to do something and helped inspire and help push forward like my producing skills after the fact. So I'm very proud of that project.
Fantastic, and congratulations to you. But how do you go about ensuring diversity and representations in the other shows that you produce as well?
Yeah, so it's funny enough when Black Girl Beauty started, again, this was like 2018, 2019. Funny enough, I actually basically told everybody on set, and told my bosses, I said, I want only people of color to basically everybody Black, should work on this production. I want Black women who are makeup artists, stylists, grip, lighting, DPs, everything like that. I only wanted Black women to be on the set. And wherever I had control over it, I absolutely got my way. And it was something that was like, this is not, having to push forward a DEI initiative to say anything. This is saying that I am a woman of color in this space. I don't see a lot of women who are sound, engineers, who are, lighting, who are in grip, who are in stagehands, who are all of these things. I don't see enough of them often. So but I know they exist. So find them and hire them, because I know that they're not getting as many opportunities as the people you guys normally hire. So that actually started a trend, and a lot of people started replicating that with their sets. And this is under a company that was a lot more diverse versus, being at BET, where, I always do, see diversity and it is celebrated and it is loved. And I love seeing that too. So I think before my time, before my transition, I'm glad that I was able to help amplify that. But even when I started the Heritage Month group chats and the Caribbean American Heritage Month, I was like, everybody got to be Caribbean for this. Everybody. Like, I don't care. Like, you got to be Caribbean for this. And that actually, the feedback from that, as bold as it was and as brazen as it was, again, was something that I basically said, no, like I'm going to do this and I don't really care what anyone thinks about it. But it's like so many people who are like, I'm Caribbean, and being able to watch my favorite dance hall artist, Spice, on the screen and getting to produce with her, all these things, it felt like such a rewarding moment for even the staff there too, and for me. So I will say that how it's bringing in people's passions and their own cultural identity is part of like who I am as a producer, making people feel included and appreciated.
It's absolutely fantastic. And sometimes you have to be the first person to give someone an opportunity as well, because how do they get seen? How do they gain experience if no one's willing to give them a job? But the other thing is, you attended the Met Gala as press coverage for VH1 and BET, so that must have been surreal. How did that experience compare to your expectations from when you studied fashion in high school?
Wow. So, I mean, it does, come full circle. 2 years, this past year was my second year of being at the Met Gala. And again, it's one of those things that as a producer, I am so grateful that I'm, I always write it like a little Caribbean girl with big dreams whenever I'm in these rooms, because I am seeing the fashion, seeing the appreciation, seeing the art up close and centered. Whereas like when you go to fashion high school, you are expected to write a full report on the Met Gala the next morning in class. Like that is your job. So like, I guess like, I don't think that my bosses knew it at the time, but like for me, it was very much like this is something that I had been bred, born, and like raised to like do. So I was like, this is an experience. This means more to me than anyone ever realized, because it was something that truly is part of a dream of mine. Because when you're embroiled in fashion design for such a long time, it definitely makes you feel, and then you're also there capturing the art of this design through your phone and a camera, is something that is just artistic in itself. So I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity. I'm grateful to represent, little Caribbean girls wherever, on the red carpet and, as press, and it felt really great. I loved it.
So did you take any Caribbean like fashion designers with you, or what was that whole experience like, from, getting dressed for the Met Gala, from doing your makeup for the Met Gala? So did you take any Caribbean people along the way with you as well?
So I will say that how my budget does not allow for me to expand that much, but I will say that interestingly enough, the first Met Gala that I did work, I wore a custom gown that was originally designed for me from one of my best friends, a really good friend of mine, Nathaniel White. He goes by Nini LA Shiro on social media, and now he's, we went to high school together, and he was voted most likely to succeed. He and I won our first fashion internship together in 2010. We had big dreams that we also remembered, that people were like, you guys are so loud and out there about your dreams and whatnot. We both looked at each other like, yes, we're going to make them come true and happen. And I remember his early designs of his fashion clothes while we were at our internship. We would always make jokes about it, about wearing it and taking silly photos. And I always believed in this brand. So it was really something for me. I actually wore it at the Wearable Art Gala with Miss Tina Knowles Lawson back in 2018. And I was able to rewear it and get it altered, actually, because I had lost so much weight in between that time. I got it altered for the Met Gala in 2022. So that was, or 2023. And then it was just great. And then I will say that while I wasn't able to wear a Caribbean designer, for this year's Met Gala, just because I found out a little bit too soon to it coming up. But Jasmine Ali, goes by Nessa Brand. She has done an amazing job of being a Guyanese fashion designer that I will always trust with all my future designs. So hopefully next year for the Met Gala, I get to wear one of her designs, because she made me feel so beautiful on the cover of the Indo-Caribbean Beauty magazine. I wear this beautiful yellow garment that she created for me. She put it in her fashion exhibition just shortly after. And I have that photo like up in my room, just because it's something that made me feel so beautiful and loved. And seeing another young Guyanese like fashion designer was such a beautiful experience for me. So next year, not this year, but next year.
That's fantastic. And what goes into prepping for a show like the Met Gala?
I will say that it takes sometimes we're able to get sometimes we're able to on the media front. I will say that, get into see the certain celebrities that we may or may not think works, and then also being able to take the content that we create from that and being able to stretch it out so that way we garner more views. I will say prepping our team to make sure that they handle different platforms, and there's a whole team that happens behind me, when that happens. So while I might be on the ground, I'm grateful for my entire team who is at home, working remotely to get this content out on our feed. So it is we treat it similarly to one of our own tentpoles where we just work as a team to get our content out there. As far as the beauty sides go, I do all my hair and makeup always, because it's something that's always special to me. And it's just, this year was very hot. I will say it was very incredibly hot at the Met Gala this year. So I wasn't a fan necessarily of my hair and makeup.
And that's the thing, after the fact, right? You look back and you think, maybe I could have done this better. But I think that you look fabulous because I saw a photo of you. So next year, you plan ahead. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in so far. You are listening to the Women of the West Indies show. We're going to take a quick break and be right back. So guys, if you are just tuning in now, I am sat down this afternoon with the fantastic Sarita Nauth. And so far we've been speaking about her interesting career working for VH1 as a social media manager, her own production, Black Girl Beauty, and just recently attending the Met Gala. So one of the things that's interesting about you is that you identify as Indo-Caribbean. How important is it for you to bring this representation into the spaces that you work, especially since you're probably going to be one of the first people of your ethnic background to do so?
So the term Indo-Caribbean was something I learned about 2 years ago when I was trying to figure out my own identity and come into terms with being Guyanese, as hard it is, now to sort of figure out. I wasn't always very celebratory about where I came from because I didn't have a true understanding about my culture and my people, where I'm from. And it took me a long time to get to that point. So when I started to really look internally about 2 years ago and sort of put a name to myself, I was very grateful to see that there were other outlets, from the Caribbean Collective magazine to Brown Gal Diary and other young women in the media space and landscape that were already doing the work and saying that Indo-Caribbean is a great way to identify where us, Guyanese, Guyanese Caribbean women came, from Indian descendants. And it was a great way to at least identify myself because I'm not Black and I'm not Indian. So very often, Caribbean women, especially Indo-Caribbean women, because we don't necessarily look like one particular race, we always have to explain who we are a little bit further. So having a term that helps define us, but not truly define us, does help us contribute to our identity and help our women, and our people stand out a little more.
And that's one of the interesting things, because I know there was a big uproar recently with that comedian who said that Guyanese are not from the Caribbean. How do you feel about that, especially as someone that identifies as Indo-Caribbean?
Would you mind repeating the last part of that question? The first
So,
part of it?
So there was a comedian recently, maybe about a year ago now, who was saying that Guyanese people are not from the Caribbean. How
Yes.
do you feel about that statement, especially as someone who identifies as Indo-Caribbean?
Well, I'm not someone on the internet that likes to cause any beef or any wars. I like to stay in my house and keep to myself in my garden. I saw that interview, and I agree with a lot of the Caribbean, content creators that came after to correct this person, to let them know and remind them that Guyana is the home of where CARICOM is. Guyana is an integral part of the Caribbean culture, the West Indies, and our history does not take away for where we are geographically. It never has. And what we contribute to this person's career and how this person has also made a career off of Guyanese culture is very interesting, that they would, dismiss us as a people to say that how we are not Caribbean enough. So it's very interesting. I might see this person. I did see them last year at the Caribbean Music Awards, which is also coming up at the end of this month in New York City. So really excited about that. But it's just very interesting because, very often we don't have enough representation. We don't have enough people who understand who we are in the mainstream media enough. So when you use your large platform to diminish an entire people, to say that they are not of relevancy for the entire Caribbean, makes it feel very, so many, I'm sure, Caribbean, like Guyanese, soca artists. And I mind you, I don't always listen to that music. But it does not take away from the hard work and the consistency of these artists, of our people. It kind of makes me very questionable as to, this is probably, it's contributed more to the problem that we already have in media. And then doing that kind of makes it seem as if Caribbean representation can and will happen, but not for them, because this really big, public, figure in the Caribbean space said that we're not important enough based on their own personal opinion.
It's funny because until I, grew older, I never really considered the fact that Guyana was in South America, because I've always been surrounded by Guyanese people and I've always embraced them as Caribbean people. They're throughout the entire Caribbean and our cultures are so close. Even here in Montserrat, we have so many people who are Guyanese. And again, there is no major difference. So I agree with you. By bringing up a topic like that, it's creating more division, and we're already fighting for a space, and you're taking that space away by, I think sometimes, even as someone that works in social media, do you think that some people just do these things just for attention without
I
really
think,
thinking
I
about
think,
the impact?
yeah, so sorry. I think a lot of people do a lot of things for attention on the internet. I think that a lot of people cosplay our culture for likes and views, and it's not a actual clear representation of who we are as a people. I don't believe the Caribbean people are a monolith. I don't believe Guyanese people are a monolith. I don't believe that I have to be a particular type of way or speak with my accent or do certain things in order to be a Caribbean, to be a representative of the Caribbean community. I don't think that I have to, or be a representation for Guyanese women. I think that I am a stellar representation for Guyanese women, and I always speak highly of our people because we aren't all the same. And so that's exactly the reason why, I use my, space and power in media to show that. And I'm very grateful that I found my tribe. And I've been finding my tribe with many people who will say, oh my God, I really don't like XYZ. Like, I actually really hate this, and that in our culture. And they were always so shy to say it, because if you say it around particular people, they would feel a type of way. So I am very grateful that I was able to, I'm unapologetic with being myself, because I'm not really affected by those people who have certain things to say about, like, if being Guyanese in some way, shape, or form. I can educate people who aren't West Indian on who and what the West Indies are and our people, without having to be something that I actually am inherently not. My Guyanese accent is pretty crap. Like, it's not great. Like, I have like I'm not gonna go there and speak with that, because any Guyanese person, some people who grew up in New York that are Guyanese have better accents than me. But I think that there's something closer to my heart from being born there, and being shuffled throughout the Caribbean, and then getting different tastes of the Caribbean, and then experiencing it again as an adult and finding myself, makes my journey unique. But the more that I talk about it, the more that I find that there's so many women who have the same story or have a very similar story, that makes them feel better about not having to fit into that sort of space.
Because that's the thing, when you almost have like a dual nationality, you feel like you have to be one or the other. And in some cases, if you went back to Guyana, they'll be telling you that you're not Guyanese enough because
Mm-hmm.
even though you were born there, but you lived in New York. And then the other way around as well, potentially, that because you were born in Guyana, that you're not New York enough, if that makes sense. So how do you navigate that, even in your career, especially when you're going to be the first in so many ways?
Well, I I think that how I navigate that is really it took me a while again to appreciate my culture. It took me a long time to really realize that the way that my culture is being representative isn't the only way. So that's exactly the reason why I've had to sit and come to terms with not being so frustrated with that. It's like, how can, if there's a problem, instead of speaking from the outside, how do I get inside and sort of meet people in the community? How do I continue to change certain things and collaborate with certain brands and let them know? And I don't have to change who Sarita Nauth is in order to represent people, because I would not say that it's not accepted for me to walk into my corporate offices with a very heavy Guyanese accent and be able to thrive, because I never inherently had that accent. But I can still walk into my corporate office and say that I would like for us to feature more Caribbean artists on this music station and this music platform, and it has happened, which is what I've done recently with BET's. We had Caribbean American Heritage Month come up, and it was so important to me to get big name Caribbean artists like Spice, Kess, Dexta Daps, Miss Tequila, Shensia, Tosh Alexander, Tina, aka Hood Celebrity. I got all of these celebrities in our door, and they were willing, and they only came here for us, for me. And I think that because of that and the work that I've done, and they were able to see and recognize the vision that I had, and knowing that I was able to talk to them about what my own journey and story, that makes me know that I'm in the right place at the right time, and I don't have to do things the way that everybody else is doing in order to represent my people. And that is something, it's very funny because I've seen that video on my video passed around to other, Visit Guyana shared it, and so many other amazing outlets shared it. And I was like telling my dad, and I'm like, oh my God, like Visit Guyana like shared my content, because it's something that was for the culture and the community. And I'm glad. And then seeing the audience respond to it, seeing other people audience, seeing my, as the senior leaders, at my company say, oh my God, this is a great project. How can we continue to grow the international, aspect of our brand? That makes me feel good, because at least I know that how this is where my representation matters. This is where I know that I'm in the right place at the right time, doing the right things. And whenever God thinks that it's right, it's time for me to elevate and bring those, talent and skills and everything that I've learned to another place. That's where it's going to align. So I'm really glad that I was able to do and continue to shoot, this, Caribbean content with different artists, and like you said, contribute to being the first of, many.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I remember seeing that reel actually, and I felt proud because a lot of the times Caribbean artists don't get that level of representation by an organization like VH1, because it's been said that, for example, dancehall artists find it way more difficult to make money off their music, and Caribbean artists as well. So it was really nice to see all of them in one video. I was thinking, wow, I wonder who made that. So it's absolutely fantastic to be speaking to the person behind it. So well done. You've also openly shared your struggles with body image and self confidence, especially being in an industry which is all about your looks and the way how you present yourself. What advice would you give to others facing similar challenges?
Wow. I will say that how, unfortunately, if you are a Caribbean woman listening to this program, I know that every single one of us have a story about our weight and our own body journey that often is criticized by people in our that are closest to us. And I will say that it's a journey of my own that I had to come to terms. When I came to terms with my identity, I came to terms with also with my body and what I wanted my body to look like and how I wanted to really present myself, as a person. And I had grown up facing criticism about my body from close family than I did external, factors and people. And I spoke openly about this after I got surgery in the Caribbean Beauty magazine, about how finding myself and getting surgery and also working out and breaking these norms, that like having to tell my Guyanese mom, hey, I'm getting a car so I can go to the gym every day. And they're like, why? And I'm like, well, if I'm being told that you're fat, you look this, you look that way. Oh gosh, look how big you get. Oh, me know you since you're this little, now you're so big. It's not a term of endearment. It's not nice. It's so old and such a decrepit, an archaic, way of our people and our women. And I feel like so often, like, there are many women who are, listen, our women, we're thick, we're proud, we got curves, like we celebrated at carnival, we celebrate everywhere. But when we go home, we're being constantly inundated with, criticism about our weight, criticism about certain things that we can't change. And, big shout out to the Caribbean women who are talking about PCOS, who are, talking about these other hormonal struggles that we have, that in the community, to let these aunties know that how you have your own insecurities and your unhealed trauma is not going to project onto me. And I'm not getting skinny to say a big, F you to them. I'm getting skinny because I want to be healthy, and I don't want, heart problems, and I don't want these issues in my life. So I've always been unapologetic about it. And I think that when I speak about it, I'm saying it to not like my aunties, I'm saying it to other people's aunties too. And I feel like that confidence that I have about being brazen and being loud, as we mentioned earlier, while it has gotten me in trouble in my family, I will never apologize to somebody for them trying to deteriorate my mental health about my body.
And that's the crazy thing, because I think in the Caribbean, people just take that for granted. I remember being at an event in March, and this woman just came up to me and said, "Oh, you need to watch your weight. You're putting on a little bit of weight." And I'm like, "How about saying hi, hello?"
Hello, how are you?
Just like lead
That's,
into the conversation, you know. And this is not even someone who I have a relationship with, someone who I conversate with. She just came up to me and she was like, "Oh, you need to really watch your weight." And at that time, I wasn't even overweight, right? So I was
and
like,
yeah, you
"Hi."
work out every day, and I see your
Yeah,
consistency, and we're very similar in that way. Oh my god, I've
like,
had that happen to me before. Yeah.
and the other thing as well is the point that you made about things like PCOS. It's like, never just assume that someone's at home eating all the pies and just gaining weight. You never know what the underlying issue may be. But I think in the Caribbean, it's either they come up to you and say, "Oh, you've gained too much weight," or they come up to you and say, "Why haven't you had a child yet?" So it's
You win some, you lose
it's
some.
yeah.
It's ridiculous. And I will say that I am so grateful, and maybe I should do a little bit more, work to kind of put this a little bit more easily accessible to people. But for, again, for any, like, I say this as a love woman, a love letter to Caribbean women, like, do not let these people get to you. Do not let someone's unhealed trauma about their own body and insecurities get to you. Like, I grew up worried about, like, PCOS causes you to get like really dark areas, like under your arms, under your chest, like, your knees, your inner thighs, like your elbows, they get really dark if you don't take care of it and manage it well. Like, I went through everything. I'm talking about, having to use, like, brightening soaps, and try to use it in a way where I didn't have anyone say anything about my complexion, like having a large scar that I now want to cover up and make sure that my skin is even and not be judged for it. But it's like these women, unfortunately, because and the men say it too, but a lot of, young Caribbean men, and if they have experienced this, I'm sorry that they have. I hate hearing how many of our Caribbean women are being attacked by, their own family, especially these women who are not in shape either.
Exactly.
I don't care. You're not related to me. And I can say on this amazing platform with this amazing woman like yourself, Rainier, who I see work very, very hard and is very beautiful.
Thank you.
I've never seen any of these women, unless you are someone who actually is on the same level of me and above. Do not criticize my discipline and my hard work and effort. Don't criticize me being at Pilates at 6:30 a.m. I should be seeing you there too, Auntie. What are you not doing there? What are you doing at 6:30 in the morning? Cooking. So the thing is that I don't need to do anything and let someone tell me about myself, or even about, because if I see it happening to other Caribbean women or any woman in general, I will say something about it, because I'm just like, you don't have the authority to say that, because why? That woman didn't have any right to say something like that to you. And this is something that's not talked about enough. And as someone who went from being over 200 pounds, had a big stomach, and I knew that I got, harassed and bullied by it, and talked about it in my family, always being told, having a larger chest naturally, being told to cover up and be more modest and not look a certain type of way, it eats away at you for a very long time. So I can only imagine someone who, they are gaining weight because of XYZ reason, instead of kicking them while they're down, help them, and I've had like other, Caribbean women come up to me in the gym, and after I finish like a 90-minute, spin class or something like that, tell me, oh, you really should be doing more like, cardio. And like I was listen, I told her, I said to how you caught me in a very good day, because if it was tomorrow, you might get cussed out then. But what I've learned is that sometimes you shouldn't wait for tomorrow, cuss them out today. That's it.
And that's the crazy thing, because I would love to sit here and say that her comment didn't impact me, but I just like was just constantly hearing her in my head again. And I'm just like, why am I letting this bother me? But as human beings, unfortunately, it happens. It sticks with you. And people don't realize the implications of just that one sentence. You need to lose weight. Or even on the flip side, where some people see you and then you lose the weight that they've been speaking about. And then they say, oh, you're
Oh,
so
you look
skinny now. You look
so
so.
good. Oh, you look so nice. So it's very interesting. As much So this is a recent example as of 1 week ago. I am mulling around in my backyard, and my sister is on FaceTime with one of my aunts, and she said, "Oh, who that in the back? Oh, that's Marisha." They call me by my middle name. And I said, "Oh, look how slim she gets. Oh, that shape look nice on she. Oh, she look good like that." And then they're saying it over and over and over and over again. And what she's saying about how, oh, now I look good, now I'm, someone who is eligible for marriage, now I'm someone who's eligible to be presented on a platter to the world. She wasn't there when I spent hours on a surgery table being cut open. She wasn't there when my parents had to pick me up, and they, made sure I got to my appointments back and forth and help me and heal me, and, make sure I was taken care of. They weren't there for that. And that was a choice I made for myself. And it's so interesting because I went through this, I by choice, but it was still my choice for the past 3 years to get up and go to the gym, even on my worst days, to make sure. And so many young women that DM me, I have so much grateful, like, an appreciation, gratitude and appreciation for them, because they consistently tell me, you getting up in the morning, going to the gym inspires me. Like, damn, Sarita's already at gym. So like, let me go. And I'm just, even on my worst days, I'll be going through a breakup. I'll be going through the hardest day of my life. And I still make sure I take my photo, just so that way it's going to help someone. And so it's, and people help me in that way too, when they celebrate me. But I think the people who help me out the most is the people who loved and appreciated me, when I was big and when I'm my weight now. So it's, I think that how, what when it comes to facing the aunties and whatnot, a lot of people don't want to say anything because it's a lot of shame. It's a lot of, oh, your young girl children are meant to be quiet. They're meant to be seen, not heard. No, you're going to hear me when I cuss you out about talking about my weight unsolicited, because you're trying to deteriorate my mental health at whatever benefit you get to sleep well at night. And to know that that still rings in your ear as like a grown woman, imagine our young girls hearing that. We already
Absolutely.
have way too much, mental health issues, suicide, domestic violence in our community with our women. The last thing we need is to be attacked from inside.
And that's the thing. People really don't understand the power of the tongue. Your power from your tongue can uplift or downgrade somebody. So you really have to be careful about the things that you say, because like I said, I am usually confident in myself. But after hearing that comment, I was just like, why does this that comment just keep popping up in my head? And in a way, it inspired me to go and work out. But like I said, I wasn't overweight, so I can just imagine the people who are plus size and above, and people who are struggling with health issues and things like that. But thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. We've had such a great conversation, the highs and lows of your career, being a woman, walking in your purpose. So just before we end, what advice would you give to a young person who is interested in a career in media?
My advice to young women who would like a career in media, especially being Caribbean, Indo-Caribbean, West Indian, is trust and know that your path is divinely meant for you. And if you have a dream in your mind to be in production, in media and entertainment, working with celebrities, doing an unconventional job in general, do not let the pressures of being someone else's dream affect your own. You go after what you want. do the things that you need to. The universe is going to conspire and make those dreams happen for you because you're following along the footpath that you know that you want to be on. So similar to me, like I was unapologetic. I knew I was going to be there. I knew that I was going to, be in media and entertainment. So just don't give up on your dreams. Do not listen to people who try to, cast their negativity and their energy onto your own dreams. So just keep being yourself.
Fantastic. So there you have it, guys. A fantastic conversation with Sarita Nauth. Up next week, we have Kerid Clement. She is a content creator and storyteller from Grenada. So we're heading to Grenada for the first time. If you're new to the show airs every Sunday at 4:30 p.m. AST on Radio Anguilla and also on 664 Connect Media on YouTube. Thank you so much again, Sarita. And again, thank you for your eyes and your ears this afternoon, guys. Take care.